Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks in a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business at paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. Everyone, it's Shawn here with another comic review video. Now, one of my viewers sent me a PayPal donation requesting that I review an older issue of Icon that came from the 1990s. And they wanted me to review this older issue of Icon from the 1990s in an effort to show how awful today's Milestone relaunch is compared to the 1990s Milestone comics, and how even during the middle of a crossover like Worlds Collide and the Fall of Metropolis, which was going on at the exact same time as Superman comics, these books were still reader friendly and accessible. Now, I bought Icon number 15 from a brother on Fordham Road back in 1994, I believe, and I've had that comic in my collection for over 25 years. It's still in its original Mylar bag and backing board, and it's still sitting in my box, but I haven't been able to get into that box with all of those comics that I bought back in college, so I had to read a copy that I saw online. So the review that I'm doing is based on a copy of Icon I'd read online, but I do have the original copy of that book, and I remember buying that on Fordham Road again from a brother named Adam on Fordham Road. So this book, as I see it, it does a great job of showing how easily accessible the Milestone universe is to new readers, and this was the second event of the Milestone universe. Now, the first event of the Milestone universe was, I believe it was the Shadow War, and the Shadow War was where they formed the Shadow Cabinet and they finally solved the conspiracy behind the quantum juice. But this second event was designed to try to bring in new readers by having these worlds collide between the DC universe and the Milestone universe, and have the Milestone characters interact with the Superman family. And in this 15th issue of Icon, in the fourth part of this Worlds Collide storyline, your Rocket meets Superboy Connor Kent in this issue. And this fourth issue is a very easy read because it not only continues the storyline of Worlds Collide, but it also is an easy entry point to these characters. So if you've never read an issue of Icon, you're not going to have a hard time with this one issue, and you're not going to feel lost or confused with this issue. And this issue features some fantastic artists from legendary comic artist Mark D. Bright, who I've bought his books, and I've like his Iron Man run, which he did with Bob Layton, and I've bought many of his Green Lantern books with the dreadful Gerard Jones, who just cannot write to save his life. He ruined Hal Jordan way before they brought Kyle Rayner in. I mean, that's another video, but Gerard Jones is one of the worst DC writers ever, and he's even a more horrible human being. But I'm going to get back to this Icon comic. Now, again, this book is the fourth part of Worlds Collide, and you're not going to have to go out here and buy a whole bunch of other books to be able to get caught up. Now, Superboy in Metropolis has saved this mailman, Fred, and he's flying above with him in the splash page, and we start to see that things aren't what Connor expected. So Connor's he saved the day, but he's in a whole different type of trouble because he's in a completely different universe. And the story continues on. Rocket sees what's going on, and she decides to go and save Superboy. and they go down and wind up landing on the bridge that has been that separates the Paris Island from the rest of Dakota, and that's where we get some interaction between Rocket and Superboy that quickly explains what's going on. So this very fourth issue of this crossover is an easy entry point for the new reader, and it also introduces us to these Milestone characters and also introduces us to the Superboy character in a very simple fashion. So in less than 3 pages, we're into this story, Worlds Collide, and we're not having any problems with this crossover. And again, this is a major crossover between two divisions, DC and Milestone, and readers aren't going to wind up overwhelmed, and they're not going to wind up confused with this crossover, because it looks like your Dwayne McDuffie and many who had worked on these Milestone books and DC books at the time, like Jeanette Kahn, understood the concept that every book is an entry point and you have to get the reader quickly into the story. Now, by the 4th page, we've got Connor being Connor, checking out Rocket in her costume, and him winding up getting into a bit of trouble with Rocket. Nothing really too bad, but it's just him being Connor. And Connor, you know, he's a teenager and he likes to check out women. He lived in Hawaii when he was Superboy, and he liked to deal with the hot chicks. So, he had a rivalry with Knockout, which I wish they would go back to, but that's another story. But this is what happens, and after this, he finds out that he's no longer in Metropolis, but he's in Dakota. And he finds out he's in Dakota because the mailman, Fred, brought them there, and this mailman is somebody known as Rift, who can go between two different universes. And again, all of this is very easy for the reader to access, and it allows us to really just get into this story very quickly. And as the story goes on, we start to see that the Rift power that this guy has is really out of this world, because he brings up some parasites, and Superboy has to fight these parasites, but then Rocket helps him out, and then we get even more stuff going on with these parasites, and they eventually wind up getting away. So a lot of action happens in this one issue. We get a lot of good storylines, and we also get some good humor between Connor and Raquel, and we also get some really fun action between Connor and Raquel as they're taking on this other anomaly that Rift makes, and they quickly start to find some chemistry, and we start to see some things going on as related to this Rift as Icon pops in, and then Edwin Alva wants to find out what's going on with this Fred. So Superboy is here in the Milestone universe, and this book again is a very easy read. And again, as Superboy gets to know Rocket, he's thinking about trying to put a move on her. Rocket reveals that she's pregnant, and I really hated that part as related to the character. I mean, Icon and Rocket could have gone on for a lot of issues. I believe this book could have went 50 issues or 100 had they not introduced the single mother angle. I always had a problem with that angle, but that's just the way it was with it at the time. But this book, again, is easy to access, easy to follow, and is not really difficult. And towards the end of the part 4, we start to see DMZ, and he's shocked by what happens with Rift as the broken bridge winds up reconnected. So that story was, again, very easy to follow, very easy for the reader to get into, and the reader is not going to wind up, again, lost like they are with current books. And compared to the modern day Milestone, that old school Milestone was just quick, fun, easy, action-packed reads that featured positive black characters, but the new Milestone, in comparison, just falls far short. If you look at the Milestone Returns versions of the characters, they are not as much fun. I mean, if you compare the Milestone Returns Rocket to the classic Rocket acted just like a teenager, and she hung out with people like Static and teamed up with people like Static, and it was just a lot of fun. Meanwhile, we've got the modern day Rocket, who is more of a woke character, and she's really just really flat, very one dimensional, and very boring. So the modern day Rocket is nowhere near as cool as the classic Rocket, even though she had those flaws as related to being a single mother, which I did not like, but there were other aspects of the character that made her appealing, but all of that is stripped away because the Reginald Hudlin, what he wanted to do is create this new version of Rocket that is featured in the Milestone Returns Infinite Edition. And this one in the Milestone Returns Infinite Edition is extremely one-dimensional and extremely boring. So when I look at that one, the version that we saw in Milestone's issue 15, she's a lot richer and a lot more multi-dimensional than the Rocket we saw in the Milestone Returns version. And this Milestone Returns Icon and Rocket version, she just seems, again, really flat, really one-dimensional, and really preachy. And she really doesn't have the same type of voice that the original Rocket did. And Icon doesn't have the same sort of voice that he did. So the dynamics are completely different in this new Milestone version. We really don't get to see that chemistry between Icon and Rocket we got in the classic Icon. So in the current one that they're launching now, your Rocket and Icon seem very stoic. They seem very, very robotic. They really don't have that real humanized connection. I mean, one of the things I liked about the original Icon and Rocket was he was the brother from another planet, and she was the black girl from the hood, and she was teaching him about a different part of black culture, and he was learning more about the issues that black people were in the world. But in this new version that we have, we really see them being really condescending, really being talking down to people, and thinking that everybody has to do things their way, and they're looking to impose their will on people. And that's just not really feeling very heroic, and it's not really feeling like you're connecting with the characters. It just really feels flat and not very sharp. So when I look at the new version, it's just not as good as the old version of Icon and Rocket. Again, the old version of Icon and Rocket, there was a good dynamic between Raquel and Augustus. Augustus wanted to learn more about black culture. Even though he had been living in this country for over 100 years, he needed to get some perspective on things. He had been living as an outsider who was living on the inside, but he needed a connection to the people, and Raquel gave him that connection. And we really don't see that dynamic with Icon and Rocket in this new version. No, we really don't see that chemistry when we look at the pages of your Icon and Rocket that were featured in Milestone Returns Infinite Edition, because in Milestone Returns Infinite Edition, we really don't see any sort of personal human connection between the characters, and that's something that, again, I felt was sorely missed. Everything was about, oh, let's take out the drug dealers, but never anything about, let's see who Raquel and Augustus are as people. So that's one of the things I had an issue with the Milestone Returns, both the Infinite Edition and the regular edition. So I just wasn't impressed with either of them. And they really, again, they don't really show us, these heroes as people. We don't get to see the relationships. And I really don't like the costumes in this one, because they really feel uninspired. They feel really bland. And it doesn't have that pop of the original versions that were created during the 90s. The original versions really felt like they were coming to life, but this one, you just don't feel that connection with the characters because they really don't have those layers or that personality or that voice. So when I look at this new version, it just feels like, yeah, we've got black characters, but these characters have no characterizations that really make you connect with them the way the old Milestone characters did. And they feel really, again, flat, one dimensional, and uninspired. And I know that, again, a good writer like myself would really be able to flesh things out with these characters, but it's not really being brought out the way it is because I believe Hudlin rushed a lot of these concepts, and he really rushed a lot of things as related to the story dynamics, and it just shows on the page of many of these icon books, like from Milestone Returns Infinite and regular editions, and it just doesn't really come together the way the classic version did because Dwayne McDuffie was a master storyteller. He had tremendous skill as a writer, and he had grand vision, but I don't really see that kind of vision that we got in the original Milestone books. And the original Milestone books, they were absolutely fantastic because, like this 15th issue showed us, that it was just very easy to get into these books and really easy to get into the story. You really didn't have to do much. I mean, this 15th issue, you just picked it up. And yes, we were in the middle of a major crossover between Milestone and DC, but you could easily get into this issue and not have a single problem with this issue. I mean, if you've never read a Superboy book, you never read an Icon book, you could get into this story and you could absolutely enjoy it. Now, if you want to see me do more comic review videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to try my first comic, Esteem No Good Deed, you can find that comic on Amazon.com for 99 cents. And this action-packed comic by Bill Walko features the Devilish Diva as she takes on a pair of hood rats who are trying to stick up a retail spot. So if you want some great all-ages fun comics, you can pick up Esteem No Good Deed on Kindle on Amazon.com for 99 cents. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers this April, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door must take on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess in paperback and e-readers this April.